The island is surrounded by the Navy, and the government is determined to end the Mugiwara. No escape route seems to have been found, except one: the sky. Vegapunk is said to have created an aerial system embedded in the upper part of Egghead, the main section. Why? Because he is the world's greatest scientist, and his brain, which holds the most important data the Earth can possess, is located in this area. The installation and use of the dome frontier is clear evidence that Vegapunk wants to protect and can protect this true treasure of humanity. With the war against over 30,000 Navy soldiers, vice admirals, an admiral, and the powerful members of the Gorosei likely to be difficult, escape would be the best solution to preserve the world's greatest scientist. It is not hard to imagine the upper part of Egghead taking off like a rocket and separating from the rest of the island, especially given Vegapunk's genius in such a futuristic context. However, this would cause a major problem. Luffy would be separated from the rest of the group. Chapter 1074 had a significant event where Luffy was the only one among the Mugiwara to break his anti-gravity shoes that allowed him to fly like the others. A Chekhov's gun that would take effect when Egghead takes off. The faulty shoes that Luffy secretly broke to avoid having to pay for them would be the cause of his separation from the rest of the crew. His future after that would remain uncertain. Personally, I like to imagine that he could be captured by the Navy because each arc of One Piece highlights this scenario. Yes, Luffy always ends up either in prison or captured by the enemy group, which would be the case today. Also, we would have a parallel with his grandfather, who is also detained but this time by the Blackbeard crew. The Monkey's D would thus be in a bad situation, and only Dragon could come to their aid, while Egghead could take off, becoming temporarily a sky island to escape destruction, and Luffy remains at sea due to the events just mentioned. York, the traitor of the Vegapunks, would also manage to escape the Mugiwara by staying on the lower part of Egghead. The worst is yet to come. She will join the world government and will be able to replicate Mother Flame, the weapon of mass destruction. The fusion reactor necessary for creating the weapon would be found precisely in the part of Egghead left behind and requisitioned by the government. We would have a catastrophic scenario, similar to that of Pluton, during the Enies lobby arc. An ancient weapon discovered, reproduced, and used by the government. They may not have gotten their hands on Pluton, but Mother Flame is just as devastating. York will then contribute by fueling this destructive power, creating a true apocalypse, deliberately triggered by the world government. As we saw in this chapter, the use of Mother Flame on Lulusia had catastrophic consequences that we had not dared to imagine. The earthquake felt around the world, and the rising water level was a sign of the beginning of the apocalypse. An apocalypse that seems to have already happened in the past. The striking resemblance between the hole in Enies lobby and that of Illusia, I think, caught everyone's eye, and today we may have the revelation of what happened 800 years ago at that precise location. The ancient country that stood here was destroyed by the power of an ancient weapon, probably Pluton, because this is where the government's enemies stood. And how can we be sure it was 800 years ago? Because in Chapter 426, Marines reveal that Enies Lobby has remained an impregnable fortress for 800 years, exactly the period when the world government was founded. If Enies Lobby is indeed 800 years old, then this gaping hole in the water dates back to the same era, if not more. Mother Flame is therefore a reproduction of a weapon from the Forgotten Century, or even from the Ancient Kingdom, since Vegapunk uses the same technology as this ancient land, which disappeared over 800 years ago. And if the mere use of this ancient weapon had consequences worldwide, whether in tsunamis, earthquakes, or rising sea levels, it also means that such events occurred in the past, as at Enies Lobby. We may have an initial explanation of why Wano Kunis is isolated during this same period. The Great Walls built around the country may have served to protect it from intruders, but also from the global rise in sea levels. But more than that, we may have the final theme of the Great War in One Piece. Take a step back and analyze the situation. The world government wants to use Mother Flame again, which will disrupt the world in an apocalyptic way. And the water level will rise again, submerging islands, countries, and kingdoms. The government has been preparing for this war for centuries, which is why they settled on the Red Line, the top of the world, where the sea can never reach them. Isolated on the highest continent in the world government will be the source of hell on earth, watching from the clouds the devastation they will cause to the rest of the world. This is the famous purge the Gorosei were preparing for. A purge that would turn into a deluge, a divine myth found in absolutely all religions, stories, and ancient writings, sacred or not. The deluge is the historical event experienced by all human species, and this is what Oda will reproduce in his work. And the rising waters are not the only clue, because a crucial element in this theory is found on Fishman Island, and it is called Noah's Ark, a ship destined for a very particular prophecy a ship created and protected for centuries by the fishmen named Noah, the ship used by the latter to survive the divine flood. Here are the beginnings of the end of the world in one piece. The use of a nuclear weapon having repercussions on the earth itself, forcing Poseidon, one of the three ancient and divine weapons, to control Noah to save all human beings. York will manage to escape and join the world government to create several of these weapons. Emu's diabolical plan is in motion, and the Great War, which has been going on for over 800 years, could come to an end and turn in favor of the celestial dragons, the gods living on an unsinkable summit, the Red Line, further explaining the strategic interest of having established their home at such heights. The end is approaching, the end of the world in One Piece 2. The signs are multiplying, and this chapter is formal proof of that. Will I be right or not? Will Luffy be captured? Will Egghead take off? Will Mother Flame be the reason for the flood desired by the world government and anticipated for centuries by the creators of Noah? These are only theories, but one thing is certain. The story is increasingly taking cataclysmic turns, so do not underestimate any of these clues.